Alright everybody, welcome back to episode 2 of the Dank NASCAR download. It's your boy G4 Stamp. I know, it's been a while. It has been a long time. Your boy's been busy doing school stuff, work stuff, league racing stuff, life stuff in general, college. Yeah, I've been busy pretty much. Alright, so there were a couple topics I wanted to cover in this episode of the Dank NASCAR download. I want to cover some busy stuff happening in the Hendrick Motorsports. We got Kyle Larson and his amazing return to the Cup Series after a short break from the Cup Series last year after his incident on Twitch where he said a racial slur. I want to talk about William Byron and what his pairing with Rudy Fugle has done for the team. And later on in the episode, we will be covering who's hot and who's not. We'll probably be discussing defending NASCAR Cup Series champion Chase Elliott, maybe having a bit of a hangover, if you will. And Denny Hamlin, who was finishing last in last year's Final Four, having perhaps one of the greatest starts to a season that we've ever seen. Alright, so let's get to it. Kyle Larson, probably a bit of a polarizing figure returning to NASCAR this year for some people. After he said the N-word in a Twitch event last year. It was the Monza Madness. I believe it was hosted by Landon Castle. I'll roll the clip right over here.
I can see it. You can't hear me? Hey.
Whoa.
Wow. Hey.
Hello? Who said that?
Kyle, you're talking to everyone, bud.
So yeah, Larson was fired by all his sponsors, fired by his team, Chip Ganassi Racing, and he pretty much hit rock bottom. I mean, nobody knew what was going to happen to him. People thought his career was over. Maybe he'd get a ride back, but things would never be the same. But Rick Hendrick, after the retirement of Jimmy Johnson, needed a great driver to fill in for Jimmy, because, I mean, Jimmy's obviously one of the greatest of all time. So Kyle Larson, we all know, is an incredibly talented race car driver, whether it be on asphalt, on dirt. In the summer, while he was off, he runs his own dirt racing team, Kyle Larson Racing. He won like 9 straight dirt races. I mean, that's incredible. You could just see the talent level alone on asphalt, on dirt. He's a winner. He's a good driver. He knows how to get it done. So Rick Hendrick took a shot on him. He wanted somebody really good replacing Jimmy Johnson. Even though the numbers switched, it was essentially Jimmy Johnson's old team, the same crew chief, the same pit crew, the same setups. But yeah, he put him in the 5 car, and Larson has been having arguably the best start to a season in his entire career. I mean, you could always say, oh yeah, of course he's having the best start to his career. He's in better equipment than he was at Chip Ganassi Racing, which is true. He is in better equipment than he was at Ganassi. I mean, Larson in the 42, I think, had 6 career wins in the span of 4 years, I think it was. And now the 42 with Matt Kenseth and now Ross Chastain, they've been terrible. I mean, the 42 has not nearly had the success that it had when Kyle Larson is in it. And now that he's at Hendrick, which is fresh off of a championship season with Chase Elliott. We will talk about that later. He's in one of the best equipped vehicles in NASCAR. But I think the one area where Kyle Larson has exceeded expectations and been the most dominant this season in this category, the mile-and-a-half tracks in specific. I mean, he and William Byron and the whole Hendrick Motorsports in general. I mean, Chase Elliott and Alex Bowman haven't led as many laps and been up front as much, but it's mainly been Byron and Larson. Larson and Byron combined have led over 60% of the laps on mile-and-a-half tracks. That's insane. But also one of the more important contributing factors to his return to the Cup Series has been his dirt racing experience that he did in 2020. I mean, we spoke about it before, how after he was fired from Chip Ganassi, he raced for his own team in dirt racing in the World of Outlaws. And like in Indiana National Midget Championship or whatever it was, he had 9 consecutive wins in the span of like a month. So, like I said, he was balling. And dirt racing in general tends to produce a lot of talent in NASCAR because just like the fundamentals and basics of dirt racing, you know, seeing how the track is, track conditions, switching lines, making passes, switching lanes to try to get around people and like where to block, where to go, what lane has momentum, risk versus reward. I mean, you see dirt racing produce a lot of talent in NASCAR. I mean, you see people like Chase Briscoe Ricky Stenhouse, Christopher Bell, and especially Larson. Just some examples of people who started out on dirt and are now in the Cup Series level of NASCAR and top level rides. So all in all, I think you have to consider Kyle Larson as one of the early season championship favorites, along with like Martin Truex, Denny Hamlin, and either one of the Penske cars really. But Larson, he's been dominant this early in the season, and it took literally no time to adjust to the new team. I mean, he went from a team like Chip Ganassi, which it's pretty good. I mean, you see Kurt Busch winning there, you saw Larson win a couple races there, but not nearly as good as Hendrick is. And usually transitioning from a not so good ride to a top ride, I mean, you've seen people struggle with it. You saw Matt DiBenedetto early in 2020 struggle from his switch from Levine Family Racing to the Wood Brothers. And when he went to Levine Family from Go Fast, he had trouble switching. You see Bubba Wallace have trouble switching from Richard Petty Motorsports into 2311 Racing, which is supposed to be better equipment. But Kyle Larson has made a nearly seamless transition to that number 5 car at Hendrick. And just considering how good he's been early in the season in such a short span of time to develop with the team, I think he's got to be one of your championship favorites, and especially considering all the mile and a halves that are in the playoffs. And speaking of championship favorites, I think it'd be disrespectful to not include Denny Hamlin in that conversation. I mean, I think we've seen perhaps one of the best starts ever by any driver to a season with Denny Hamlin in 2021. Despite not having any wins, Hamlin has been easily the best driver in the field. I mean, yes, every Joe Gibbs Toyota besides Hamlin has won a race this year so far. Martin Truex with 3 wins, most recently coming this past weekend at Darlington. Kyle Busch won at Kansas 2 weeks ago, and Christopher Bell in the second race of the season at the Daytona Road Course. And JGR in general has won 3 out of the last 5 races, so I think it's fair to say they've been one of the best teams this season overall. And Joe Gibbs Racing's leader this season and the past few seasons, I mean, it's got to be Denny Hamlin. I mean, 6 wins in 2019, 7 wins in 2020, championship 4 in both of those seasons, and he's leading the Cup points right now. I mean, Hamlin has finished top 5 in 9 out of the 12 races this season. In those 3 races where he didn't finish top 5, one of them was Homestead, where he was running top 5 before a speeding penalty, where he recovered to finish, I believe it was 11th or 12th. And then he got that wreck at Talladega a few weeks ago. But I mean, it's Talladega. Everybody gets into something at Talladega. I mean, you expect the unexpected there. And that third race where he didn't finish top 5 was at Kansas 2 weeks ago, where he hit the wall, battling for the lead with Kyle Larson, blew a right front tire, hit the wall, and still, even after right front damage, after blowing a right front tire, smacking the wall, with the crushed-in fenders because of how sensitive the Cup cars are, with the non-composite bodies, and you know how much a fender rub can do to a tire. It can ruin your entire race. He still managed to go back and finish 12th. So, I mean, that speaks to a lot of how dominant Denny Hamlin has been this season. I mean, he was running top 10, top 5 in literally all of those races. Homestead, he was running top 5 before the penalty. Talladega, he led the most laps before getting in that crash. And Kansas, he blew a tire while battling for the lead. And just that top 5, top 10 consistency has got him a huge points lead. I mean, he's 75 points ahead over Martin Truex Jr., who has 3 wins already this season, leads the Cup Series in playoff points and in wins. And Denny Hamlin is still 75 points ahead of him. That's more than a whole race worth of points. And everybody else behind Truex, Hamlin is at least 100 points above them. So he's got a pretty comfortable lead in the points. And the stats alone just show how good of a season he's having. I mean, look, average start of 6.1. In races where starting position has been determined really by the overall performance in the previous race. It's got like a formula with like fastest lap, most laps led, finishing position. It's like a mix of all 3. And with an average start of 6.1, that just shows how good he's been on a week-to-week basis. And his average finish, 7.3. That's Kevin Harvick's average finish overall last year. And we know how good Kevin Harvick was last year. We were saying he was having one of the best seasons ever. So average finish of 7.3, pretty solid. He's completed 99.9% of the laps this season. All 3 of those laps that he missed were at Talladega because he was 3 laps down because of that crash. He leads the Cup Series in laps led. He's got 749. The driver with the second most laps led, 608 for Martin Truex Jr., his Toyota teammate. And he's led those 749 laps out of 3,345 laps led, which is more than 22% of the laps this season, which means more than a fifth of the laps that have been ran this season in the Cup Series races have been led by Denny Hamlin. Plus, he also leads the Cup Series in stage wins with 5, so it's fair to say the stats show he's been doing the best. And all those stats which I just rattled off, 6.1 average start, best in the Cup Series. 7.3 average finish, best in the Cup Series. 99.9% of laps this season. That's second best in the Cup Series, I believe. And obviously, like I said before, he leads the Cup Series in stage wins with 5. Second most is Kyle Larson, as I discussed Larson's great start. He has 4 stage wins. But the one question you gotta bring up, should there be concern for Denny Hamlin not winning a race or missing the playoffs because he doesn't win? Because, I mean, we've already had 10 different winners in 12 races. So you got to be worried about Hamlin because 10 out of the 16 playoff spots are already locked in. And Hamlin is not locked in yet, but should there really be a concern for him not winning a race? I mean, I don't think so. I mean, he's led at least 1 lap in 11 out of the 12 races this season. The only race where he did not lead a lap was at Homestead. And when you look at his past 2 seasons, he had 6 or more wins in each of his seasons with Chris Gabehart. He had 6 in 2019, 7 in 2020. I think it's fair to say that there's a pretty low chance of him going winless this year before the playoffs. And even if there's spots available for non-winners to make the playoffs, he's got a decent cushion. People say, oh, well, if Denny Hamlin does make the playoffs, he might not have enough playoff points in order to make it out of the first or second round. But he has 15 points for being regular season championship if he stays in the spot he is right now. He's also got those 5 stage wins. He's got 20 playoff points, which is second only to Martin Truex Jr. because of those 3 wins. So I think it's fair to say that his cushion is good enough. Alright, so I'd like to introduce a new section, a special section to the podcast where we talk about who's hot and who's not. We talk about drivers that are on a good streak, a lot of consecutive good finishes, organizations that have a lot of good finishes, are winning a lot, and we also talk about the drivers who we might need to worry about a little bit and who are not doing as well. So without further ado, let's talk about 2 drivers that are hot and 2 drivers that are not. Alright, so just to get started on who's hot, we're going to talk about an organization as a whole today, Richard Childress Racing. They've been doing pretty good this year, not only in the Cup Series, but in the Xfinity Series too. I mean, in the Cup Series, we see drivers like Tyler Reddick and Austin Dillon both in playoff spots right now. Tyler Reddick had a rough start to the beginning of the season, my bad. But he's fought his way back. He's got a lot of top 10 finishes, and now he sits at 16th in the points. And Austin Dillon, he has had a very good year so far. He's flown under the radar a little bit because he doesn't have those wins yet. In his previous years where he's been paid a little attention, he's at least had wins. But he hasn't had any wins yet. It's still early in the season, a long season ago. But Austin Dillon is in 13th, I believe, in the standings. He's strung out a lot of top 10, top 5 finishes. He's got a lot of stage points, and we consistently see him running in the top 15. And even in their Xfinity program, they switched to 1 car this year. Last year, they ran just the part-time car. That was a 21 car. It was run with Anthony Alfredo, a bit of Kaz Grala, a bit of Myatt Snyder. But they're running the 2 car. They're bringing that full-time on a partnership with Tex Slater and Myatt Snyder as their full-time driver. Myatt obviously had that win at Homestead Miami Speedway, and he's locked into the playoffs. So could we see possibly another championship run for that Richard Childress number 2 team that we saw with Tyler Reddick in 2019? And quite possibly the reason that Richard Childress Racing has been so better is it was a not so popular headline during the off season, but RCR and ECR engines paired up with Hendrick engines for an alliance between all the Chevys. So they share data. I think they still make their own engines individually, but between the 2 engine companies, ECR and Hendrick engines, They're sharing data together, and I really believe that RCR, who runs off of ECR engines, is really going to gain a lot from it because Hendrick has just come off of a championship season. I mean, Hendrick's program all around at mile and a half, they were good last year. Road courses, they were the best. Short tracks, they were good as well. They had that Martinsville win with Chase Elliott, and of course the Phoenix win with Chase Elliott. Their super speedway package is always good. You always see a lot of Hendrick cars qualify up front, especially in the Daytona 500. And I really think that ECR's alliance with Hendrick engines is really improving the performance of these RCR cars. Alright, so RCR is on a roll, but who is not? I gotta say, Chase Elliott, the defending champion of the NASCAR Cup Series. I mean, it might be a hangover, maybe. I mean, we've seen championship hangovers in the past. It just might be that he's, I don't know, maybe fallen off this year or something, or that his competition has gotten a lot better. I mean, this is the only Hendrick driver without a win this season. He hasn't led nearly as many laps as he did at this point last year. I mean, you see him getting passed left and right when he's out on the track. But overall, I think it might be the championship hangover. I mean, we've seen it in a lot of years where cars who won the championship or who just won a lot of races in general have just not had the same season right after. I mean, just come to think of it, Kevin Harvick, who had 9 wins last year. That's one of the best seasons we've ever seen in the modern era since 2000. I mean, he hasn't had a win yet this year, and he's like 7th or something in points. We saw Kyle Busch last year after his 2019 championship. He had to defend the Cup, and he only had 1 win and had what was easily the worst year of his Cup career. 2018, we've seen drivers like Brad Keselowski after his 2012 championship come back in 2013 and only win 1 race. We've seen drivers like Denny Hamlin after a superb season in 2010. Even though he didn't win the championship that season, he still had a great season and barely lost to Jimmy Johnson in that championship, but he came back in 2011 with only 1 win. So it could be what's possibly a championship hangover, if you will, from Chase Elliott. I mean, in some of the interviews he did, I think it was on the Dale Jr. download, we saw just how drunk he was after all the partying he did. We know he did a lot of partying. He went to Dawsonville and spoke in front of his hometown and did burnouts and stuff. It was a huge celebration. So, I mean, I don't know, maybe big celebrations make up for big slumps the following season. All right, and who's hot? Number 2. I mean, you got to talk about William Byron, honestly. I mean, he leads the Cup Series in top 10. He's 3rd in the regular season points. With Rudy Fugle, he's completely changed the dynamic of that 24 team, which has barely been successful over the past 3 years, the first 3 years of his Cup careers, through his several crew chiefs. The one that he had in his rookie year, and even after Chad Canal switched, he didn't have that much success. But look, now with Rudy Fugle on top of the box, they succeeded together in trucks, and I think that really translates to their Cup success that they've had this year. I mean, they're one of those people who you have to consider a championship contender at this point. I mean, he's led more at this point through 12 races. He's led more laps through those 12 races than he had all of last year combined. So that's just a crazy stat to just see the improvement, really, and just showing that he's not a bust like people thought he was these past few years. And to finish off the who's not and who's not section of the podcast, we got to talk about Kurt Busch. I mean, he's not having one of the best seasons so far. I mean, this is one of the worst starts to a season in his career. In the first 12 races, I mean, he's only finished on the lead lap 6 times in 12 races, which is only 50% of the races, which, considering he was in the round of 8 last year, not that good. He also has 2 DNFs. He had an engine fire at Talladega a couple weeks ago. Essentially speaking of fire, he also caught fire this week at Darlington after being involved in a wreck with Bubba Wallace. He hit the inside wall, and then everything under his car set afire. He's been on fire twice in the last 3 weeks, which is not exactly a good look for your season. He was also in a wreck at Daytona, which put him several laps down and completely out of race contention. and he's just not having a good season compared to what he had last year when he won at Vegas in the round of 12 and advanced to the round of 8. So we got to wonder if Kurt Busch is going to bounce back. And we just hit 20 minutes on our podcast, so that should do it for all today. We'll be coming out with another episode soon. I'm off of school. School's pretty much over for me, so I'll be able to record a lot more often than I have been the past couple months. I will be getting out more content for you guys. Don't worry about it. Next episode, we're going to talk about the Stewart-Haas slump and maybe some concern for rookie Anthony Alfredo, as well as some other things that will be coming up this weekend at Dover. So, thank you guys for listening in to the Dank NASCAR download. It's been a pleasure, and I will see you guys soon.